Welcome back. You are watching Holy Land Uncovered. I'm Emily Francis. A popular New York City rabbi is doing his part to inspire millennials to discover the pearls of Judaism and to pave the way for the future generations of leaders during this digital age. We are so happy to be joined by Rabbi Mark Wildes, founder of the Manhattan Jewish Experience and author of a new book. Welcome, Rabbi Wildes, and let's start by telling how young Manhattan Jews are waking up after a long slumber during COVID-19.
I think people are so starving for a rebirth on so many levels. I live in Manhattan, and the Jewish community, I feel, just feels cooped up and stuffed into their little 2x4 apartments. And they're just tired and they want to get out. And this is actually the first year. Well, last year we were on the street for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur services. We had close to 500 people praying on different streets in Manhattan. And it was actually quite nice.
Meanwhile, COVID-19, not the first time the world has experienced massive plagues, but history has suggested that people have actually searched for some kind of spiritual meaning after a massive pandemic. Would you say that's true vis-a-vis the coronavirus?
I also feel, given what's happened in the world, like COVID is just this crazy plague that engulfed humanity, and people are asking questions. I have a lot of sort of spiritual seekers, young men and women are coming to me like, Rabbi, what does this mean? Now, I'm not a prophet. I'm only a rabbi. It's above my pay grade. I can't tell you why we had this plague, okay? But it does shake young people's minds up when we can explain everything rationally. We don't need God. We don't need religion. We can explain everything ourselves. We're coming out of this because of science. But science can't explain this. And that is inspiring interest, I would say.
The rocket attacks by Hamas into Israel last May, of course, led to a worldwide campaign against Israel and the Jewish people, including LA and New York, where Jews were actually attacked, and your friend Joseph Borgen was severely injured as well. What do you have to say about the rise in anti-Semitism?
I was really appalled at the silence of some of our elected officials and some of even our Jewish leaders, how quiet people were about the anti-Semitic attacks, especially after so many Jews were involved in Black Lives Matter. And I for the first time, had to talk to my kids about wearing the kippot on the street, maybe putting on a baseball hat. I mean, I never remember feeling that way. And like, all of this is going on at the same time. All of this happened this year. It just seems like anti-Semitism is the last acceptable form of bigotry. And I don't feel a lot of pushback. I didn't feel it at the rally, even though the rally it was exceptionally well done. Elie Wiesel's son, was a friend, and he organized this whole thing. He asked me to come and bring a group, so I did.
Rabbi, what is the best way, in your opinion, to inspire American millennials to connect with Israel and Judaism?
I feel a responsibility as a rabbinic figure in New York City to help facilitate that as much as possible. And I'll be perfectly honest, Israel has been a major way through which I've connected my students.
And it's unfortunate. Your students were the ones actually to encourage you to write a book during COVID. Tell us about the book, The 40-Day Challenge.
The book has been great, actually, because it started because of COVID. I started a WhatsApp. I did all that. I began a podcast during COVID. I wrote this book because I had so many people going on to my 5-minute message podcast. And they were like, why don't you write these up? And it hit me like, how many Jews in America, or even in Israel, honestly, just sort of show up on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, waiting for that magic to somehow come out of nowhere? And I always said, like, how much better would people's experiences be if they actually did a little studying on the way there?
Meanwhile, you've also found creative ways to be cool and to appeal to your millennial community of 20 and 30-somethings. Like you said, you've done podcasts, you've also done music videos set to the tune of Rocky and more. Tell us about that.
It's so interesting. It's literally a new medium. I would say most of my students at MJE listen to podcasts. So you got to get into that space. Most of my students are the 20s are on Instagram, the 30s are on Facebook. You know, you can get in front of them. Now, you're not in front of them for too long. Spiritual growth is not something which is going to move with the times, meaning like it's the soul and it's our connection with a higher source. That's only going to happen if you get people, you know, a little Zischfleisch, as they say, like you get the Fleisch to the seat. You got to get people seated long enough to focus long enough to actually be impacted spiritually.
By the way, also with single people today using dating apps and even going on multiple dates per day, are you actually concerned about young people finding and fostering long-term relationships?
We always struggle with relationships. Who doesn't? And in every generation. But today, because things are so quick and fast, we're not giving each other enough of a chance to literally love each other. I see this with dating. My issue is the mind and the heart just simply do not work that way. You need downtime with people. People need to give time to build relationships. A, in order to establish the relationship initially, and B, to grow it.
Rabbi, thank you so much for joining us, and best of luck with your book.